All right, and we're live.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. We are Cyber Data Pros with our CMMC webinar, the new proposed CMMC rule and how to get aligned prior to certification. My name is Leah Eubanks. I'm a data privacy and security analyst, as well as a registered practitioner here at Cyber Data Pros. And Matt, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yep, my name is Matt Sherrod. I'm also a data privacy and security analyst here at Cyber Data Pros. I'm also a CMMC registered practitioner advanced RPA.
Great. And so in this webinar, we will be discussing an overview of CMMC as well as some of our personal takeaways from the proposed rule, how to prepare for the CMMC certification assessment process, and a Q&A session at the end for any questions.
Sounds great.
Okay, and beginning, let's start with an overview of CMMC. The first bullet point we have, what is CMMC? So the abbreviation CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification.
Yeah, so if you say CMMC certification, it's technically incorrect. Though I know plenty of people do that. It's very confusing. But CMMC overall is just the latest step in the federal government's attempt to bring federal contractors to a higher level of cybersecurity standards. Um, if we go all the way back to DFARS 7012, that was the initial attempt by the DoD to try to bring some of their defense industrial base contractors in line with the necessary cybersecurity standards to help protect the DoD's mission and protect our readiness as a whole. But this has been the cybersecurity readiness has been an ongoing effort throughout the federal government for over a decade at this point, going back to FAR 52.204-21, NIST 800-52, the FedRAMP initiative, the building out of CISA, and we've really kicked it into gear since the 2018 Colonial Pipeline hack, which obviously brought a lot of the oil reserves of the nation in the southeast to a standstill, and really helped to bring the cybersecurity of contractors of the federal government and just general infrastructure to the forefront. And so obviously we've had 7012 for a long time. You've had these CUI, these controlled and classified information obligations for a long time, but the DoD and the DIBCAC have seen that just because these have been in place in contracts and people have been saying they've been doing them and they've been required to do these cybersecurity requirements does not mean that they have been. So CMMC is the next generation of that, where we'll be putting a lot more effort into actually verifying that the DIB contractors are doing what they say they're doing. And there's lots of talk that if this goes well on the DoD side, that CMMC as a whole might get pushed out to more branches of the government, because again, across the entire federal government, there has been a concerted effort to try to bring contractors and critical infrastructure into a more secure posture for cybersecurity.
That was great, Matt. Thank you. And so after we discussed what CMMC was, let's discuss when the proposed rule will be finalized. So the proposed rule for CMMC was dropped very recently, at which point it is currently in a 60-day review period where it is available for review by everybody, and people can submit questions or feedback on the proposed rule. Matt, if you have anything to add.
There's this current 60-day comment period, but we kind of expect it to get extended to the 120-day comment period. At which point, I'm sure there'll be thousands, tens of thousands of comments for the government to review. There's also going to be additional agency reviews as well, some regulatory reviews. So it dropped to December 22nd, but I wouldn't expect to see it actually finalized until probably like the summer, probably mid to late summer. And at which point we then have our like 4 phases of rollout. So everyone should take a look at the different phases and what they expect their required level of CMMC to be to kind of get an idea of when they need to be compliant by. Everybody should definitely be already heading in that direction. We've known about CMMC for years now. But again, we're getting into the crunch period here where we probably have about 6 months or so, maybe 9 months before the initial wave of CMMC rollout definitely starts to kick up.
Yeah. So moving on, a lot of people are wondering if it's even necessary for their organization to have CMMC. Does my organization need CMMC? Basically, CMMC deals with controlled unclassified information that the U.S. that the U.S. Department of Defense deals with. So CMMC is a necessity, going to be in the future a necessity for contractors who want work from the DoD, as well as subcontractors of those contractors that want work from the DoD. Matt, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, definitely. If you currently are subjected to DFARS 7012, you should know that your new contracts on renewal or any new contracts you go for in the same space are going to require you to be subjected to at least a level 2 certification, at least a self-assessment. That shouldn't be anything new to you. You may not be currently actually doing those self-assessments or being thoroughly aligned with the controls, but that is something that you should be prepared for. Additionally, if you're doing any kind of contract work directly with the DoD, even if you're not subject to DFAR 7012 right now, you will be subject to level 1 CMMC. That's going to be in place for all DoD contracts by the end of phase 1 rollout. So you should be ready for that. And if you're a subcontractor who does a lot of work with a lot of primes on DoD contracts, you may not be getting the flow down you're supposed to be getting right now. So you may think that you're not going to be subject to any of these CMMC certification requirements. But there will be much more strict flow down when CMMC rolls out. So take a look, see if you're getting any FCI, if you're getting any federal contract information. You probably are at the very minimum from your primes. So be prepared to get a level 1 certification, and be aware of if they're flowing down any CUI to you. So you may not know off the top of your head what CUI isn't, but reach out, get someone involved who does know. Try to learn yourself, or just see what the primes are thinking is if they're going to expect you to get that level 2 certification. But really, anybody who works in the DoD space, anybody who works directly with DoD, or who is going to do a lot of subcontracting for prime contractors on DoD contracts, you should expect to get a CMMC certification. It may be tougher right now to figure out on your own what level you're going to need, but you're going to need one.
Yep. And then, so the last point in our overview of CMMC, people would be curious, how long does certification take? Matt, if you would like to answer that real quick.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to know. That's going to be a very varied question, and I think there are a lot of the larger contractors. They should probably have already been, if they weren't already aligned with 7012, they should have been moving in that direction at least last year. Because depending on the size organization, if you're a large organization that does a lot of DoD work, to try to go from scratch, it's probably going to take you like 12 to 18 months. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of controls. Trying to build out an enclave or fully move over your organization, it's a big undertaking, especially level 2 and level 3. Level 3 is a huge endeavor. If you're a smaller organization, a little bit more nimble, if you don't need an enclave because you primarily do DoD business, it might be a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. Especially if you're a small business at level 1, you just got to do those 15 basic controls. They're subject they probably already are subject to from FARS 52-204 to 21. But it's going to really depend on what the size organization is and how prepared you already are. If you've already got the enclave built out, if you've already been trying to align yourself, and you just know that you aren't necessarily getting everything completely tightened up, it's probably not as big of a burden, and you're probably in a good spot. So you can probably be ready before the final rules propose. The final rule is finalized. But if you're starting from scratch, you need to be moving as soon as possible because it's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of action to move you over to make sure you're in an enclaved environment, especially if you use a CSP, making sure you're using a CSP that's going to be compliant with FedRAMP moderate and meets the other requirements in 7012 for CSPs. So the sooner, if you haven't already started doing that, start moving soon. You're going to be pushed up against the wall with CMMC coming out. So I would definitely make sure that you're aware of that. It's not a 3-week project. It's not a 2-month project. If you're going for level 2, if you're a medium-sized organization or bigger, it could be probably a minimum of a 6 to 9 month project. Probably longer if you aren't ready for it.
All right, thank you, Matt. And now that concludes our overview of CMMC. We can move into what we at Cyber Data Pros made our takeaways of CMMC. Okay. Our takeaways of this proposed rule, we have 8 of the largest takeaways that we came up with. I'll begin with number 1. We found that 95% of level 2 contracts will require C3 PAO assessments.
Yeah, one of our big takeaways was just how great the margin will be of level 2s that will need to go before C3PO to get an assessment. Some contractors at level 2 will be able to just do a level 2 self-assessment, which is going to be less of a burden for sure. But it looks like it's going to be a small percentage of the actual contracts themselves. So if you are expecting to handle CUI or need a level 2 CMMC certification, you should expect to have to go before a C3PO, a certified third-party assessor organization, and get an assessment for them and get certified. And that matters because there's already quite a queue and backlog of assessments being scheduled and planned. There's only 32 or so C3POs. I don't know if that number's gone up. It's probably gone up. But it's a small number. There's tens of thousands of organizations that are going to be subjected to level 2 certifications. And there's companies that are already ahead of the game that are booking their assessments. So if you're expecting to compete on some of these contracts that involve CUI, you need to be going ahead and getting ready and being prepared to schedule a certification as soon as possible, because there's already going to be a queue. You should not expect to be able to get away with just doing a level 2 self-assessment. There's not going to be a lot of those contracts out there.
Thank you, Matt. Let's move on to the second of our key takeaways. We found that the CMMC level 2 controls will mirror the NIST 800-171 R2 controls. Matt, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is too much of a surprise. There's nothing really that really stands out, other than I think that we all know that Rev 3 is in the work for 800-171. We've seen the most recent draft that dropped in November or so, which does make some significant changes to Rev 2. But there is no current language in the proposed rule that really points towards everyone should be looking at Rev 3 and being ready for Rev 3. I'm sure they'll move to Rev 3 at some point in time, but it looks like that where it's going to be the same 14 domains, no major changes. Well, no changes to any of the controls themselves. It's just going to be this the first rollout of CMMC 2.0 is going to be for level 2, going to be able to just be getting aligned to NIST 800-171 Rev 2, plain and simple. Nothing, no surprises, and no immediate looking towards Rev 3. So if that's what you've been doing, if you've been maintaining compliance with 7012, nothing changes. Nothing should be surprising to you.
Thank you. Number three, POAMs, which POAM stands for Plans of Actions and Milestones, will be permitted for organizations seeking certification that meet 80% or 88 out of 110 controls during certification assessment. Matt, if you have anything to add.
Right, that's good. This is going to be for level 2 certification assessments. Um, this is about what we had been expecting, what we've been hearing through the grapevine when this draft was being written. So this isn't too surprising. It's good to hear that there will be poems. You won't be expected to be 100% upfront. But 80%, 88 out of 110 controls is a high bar. I mean, you're going to have to really be on top of um, your implementation and top of your system, your SSP, to be able to even get to the poems. So you can't feel like with the poems, you can't feel like you can be in the middle of implementation, just kind of do the best you can, and then just come out the other side of certification with some stuff to fix. You're only gonna have 180 days to remedy any of these poems, so you need to be at 88 out of 110, and then you only have 180 days. You have half a year to close out any remaining poems. So this is really more of an opportunity to fix any mistakes than it is to the opportunity to kind of half-ass your implementation and then just fix it up later on the back end.
Right, and then another one, number 4, another thing that we found, only 1-point controls can be included in a plan of action and milestones, but not all 1-point controls are able to be poemmed. Matt, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, this one was a little bit more surprising for me. I don't know about anybody else. I don't know if they were hearing through the grapevine that it was only going to be 1-point controls. We definitely were hearing that all the 5 pointers, all the basic security requirements, were going to be required to be completed and fully implemented and met in order for you to be able to do poems. But we did not, at least for over here, I didn't hear it, but that was going to include the 3 pointers as well. And the fact that not all those 1-pointers are poemable, there's a lot of 1-pointers that are going to be required to be already fully implemented before you can get that conditional certification assessment. So it's actually, going back to the last point, it's actually a much higher burden to be able to get to the point of poems than we had originally expected. I'd kind of done the math, and in order the base minimum, you're going to be able to the base minimum score you're going to be able to get on your conditional certification assessment, and then do poems. You're going to have to have an 89 out of 110 SPRS score. So that's a high threshold to clear. So again, this isn't the poems. I know lots of people in the 7019, 7020 era have used poems to kind of as a project management tool, as a plan for the future. But it's definitely going to be in the CMMC 2.0 era. It's going to be more of an opportunity to remediate issues. It's not going to be something that you can just kick down the road. It's not going to be something that going into these certifications, you're going to have to actually be confident that you have met 100% of these controls, because there's not a lot of flexibility. You get some poems, you get some chances to remediate, but there's not a lot that you get to remediate. So you need to really be confident when you go into these certification assessments.
Right. Moving on to number 5, if you achieve a perfect joint surveillance voluntary assessment score with 110 out of 110 with no open poems, you can get directly transferred to a level 2 certification.
Right. And if you're not familiar with the Joint Surveillance Voluntary Assessment Program, it's something that is being done in conjunction with the DIBCAT, the Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Assessment Center. And it's kind of been a opportunity to go ahead and test out the CMMC assessment process for the DIBCAC, the C3PAOs, and defense industrial base contractors. So it is done with the same veracity as a C3PO assessment will be done, runs through the same process, and is going to produce similar results. And so one of the most interesting things about this new proposed rule is that if you are a company that is ahead of the curve, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you feel comfortable going before the GSVA, I would try to do that to the best of your ability. If you can partner with a C3PAO, they can get you through the GSVA program, and you can go ahead and get that assessment done. And if you are able to successfully score a 110 out of 110 on that level 2 certification assessment, and have no poems at the end of that GSVA, it'll transfer directly over to a level 2 certification. So you'll be way ahead of the curve when CMMC 2.0 drops. No waiting in line to schedule an appointment with a C3PAO. No waiting on the different the contracts to come out with their whatever requirements they are, trying to filter through what you can and can't bid on at the time as you're waiting for your assessment. You will be one of the few contractors that is at the head of the line who's ready to go. So I think that's a huge difference maker. If you do a lot of DoD work, if you do a lot of work with the CUI, I would definitely consider that, especially if you are already doing what you're supposed to be doing with 7012. I'm going to also then jump ahead to point number 6 here, that annual affirmations are required at all levels of CMMC. With this one, the point with this is that if you are the senior official in your organization and charged with certification and making sure that you are aligned with 7012 with all of your cybersecurity requirements, and you're the one who is going to take ownership and responsibility for this program, you are required to do an affirmation saying that you are still meeting all of these different requirements annually. So there's no opportunity for your organization to slack just because the level 2 certification assessments are every 3 years. It doesn't mean that you can let the organization stray from those controls on years 2 and 3. It's not a get certified on year 1 and then don't think about it again until year 3. Every year you're going to be certifying to the DoD that you are you're referring to the DoD that you are meeting these requirements, that you are doing what you say you're doing, you are doing what you said you're doing in the last assessment, and you are preparing for the next assessment. So everyone should be aware that they are going to be required to make those obligations, and if they are found that those affirmations aren't correct, you could be held liable under the False Claims Act. So just anybody who's taking ownership of this needs to stress to their organization that it's continued monitoring, continued maintenance. It's a every year thing. It's not a 3-year thing. And that kind of jumps directly into the next point of every level has to do an affirmation every year. But for level 1, every year you will have to do an annual self-assessment. That's different from level 2. It's different from the certifications level 2 and level 3. It's not nearly as big of a burden, the level 1 assessments. But if you're a small business, just a small shop, and you are subject to these level 1 self-assessments, you're going to have to be staying on top of this, continuing to update your inventory tables, continuing to update your boundaries, everything like that, because you will have to do a self-assessment every single year. You'll have to have a senior official signing off, affirming to this self-assessment, and you're going to have to conduct it every single year. So if you have the time and the resources to do that, definitely make sure you do and keep on top of that. But it might be worth talking to an outside party, to a consulting firm, to help you kind of take some of that burden off.
Right. Thank you, Matt. And then our final takeaway for our proposed rule, number 8, MSPs will need to be level 2 certified if they work with an organization seeking certification that wants that level 2 certification. this ties into what we talked about previously about CMMC being required by not just contractors, but contractors of those contractors. So those subcontractors will be affected by this CMMC implementation. Matt, if you have anything
Right.
to add.
Yeah, and it goes even further where it's going to be required for any ESP as well, external service provider. And the proposed rule defines ESP. It's a little bit more limiting than I expected it to be, which is good. Um, but if you're an MSP and you're doing work for an OSC, and your organization, your ESP, processes or stores or transmits any of that CUI, you're going to have a level two CMMC certification before your OSC can sit for that certification as well. And if they are a transmitting FCI, and you are an MSP working on that FCI, touching that FCI, you're going to have a level one as well. That's obviously not the same level of burden as the level two, which is why we call that out specifically. But as an MSP, you should be prepared to match whatever level your OSC that you're working for is seeking. If they are level three, that's a whole different ball game. There's not going to be a lot of MSPs out there that are going to be compatible with that. They're going to meet those standards. But if you have a small MSP that you work with, a local one, if it's level one, they could probably do that pretty quickly. Hopefully, they're doing some of those things anyways. Hopefully they're aligning with NIST 800-52. But if they aren't, you need to push them to make sure that they get aligned with that, or find a different MSP. And if you are expecting to need to get a level two certification and go through the assessment process with a C3PO, make sure the MSPs are aware of that if they are ready. If they aren't ready to get a certification themselves, then you're probably going to need to look elsewhere, because you are going to have an MSP if you continue to use an MSP that has that certification, or else you won't even be able to sit for your certification assessment either.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. And now that we've discussed the overview and our takeaways of this CMMC proposed rule, we can move into how we at Cyber Data Pros can recommend you prepare for the CMMC rule. Our first step is to understand the CMMC levels, because that will affect the level and intensity of how you're going to need to dedicate your company and your organization and your resources to the CMMC. So level 1 has those 15 controls, level 2 has those 110 controls, and level 3 is unique. It's very intense. Matt, if you want to elaborate on level 3 or any of those levels I just discussed.
Oh, yeah, level three is kind of that mystery still, because we don't really know what it is. We're still waiting for which of the 800-172 controls are going to be included in level three. So I know us personally here, we're not too focused on it. It's still far off, and it's going to apply to so few organizations. It's just going to presumably apply to just your bigger organizations, your Raytheons, your Lockheeds, Northrop Grumman. So it's going to affect a very, very small percentage of the defense industrial base, and we really don't even entirely know what it's going to be yet. We just know it's going to be a small subset of 172 controls added on top of the 171 controls. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we believe most organizations seeking the assessment will be level 2.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're understanding the level two, the CMMC levels, it'll help you get a clear idea of where you should position your organization. Are you going to need level two? Are you going to need level one? Where are you currently in comparison to where you need to be? Definitely just go through and understand what the different levels are, and understand the purpose behind each level.
Right, thank you. And our next step is to stay informed. This CMMC, right now we're even just discussing a proposed rule. Nothing is concrete yet. Very frequently more updates are made to it and more tweaks, and it's a very fluid system right now. So staying informed is very important.
Right, definitely just keep checking with the news related to this. I mean, we can go all the way back to, was it 2020 or so, when we were looking at CMMC 1.0, and there was going to be 5 levels, and everyone was preparing for that and how to get ready for that. And then that didn't last through the comment period, and they went back and reworked it. We got to CMMC 2.0, and then even in the 2.0 writing process, when we were hearing different things, we were seeing things from Cyber B coming out. We now technically are on the 2.1 process, which is not significantly changed from 2.0 and isn't significantly different from what we were expecting. But these things are very fluid. The timetables could change. Things could get pushed back further. Things could surprisingly move up quicker potentially. But just stay informed, be ready. Kind of listen to what DoD, what the DIBCAC, what the C3POs, what Cyber B are saying, so you can be ready and adjust anything that might change along the way.
Mhm. Right. And that goes into our next point, step 3, employee training and awareness. Matt, if you want to elaborate on this one.
Yeah, this is one of those things that you can kind of do, especially if you're an organization that isn't really fully ready yet, or you don't have a ton of resources. Um, the employee training and awareness is a general requirement for CMMC, but you should also be training and making sure that your employees that are going to be responsible for carrying out this project are ready and know what they're doing. Um, there is a lot to learn. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to prepare for. And there's probably new systems and new processes and procedures that you're going to have to put in place. So definitely go ahead and take the time to make sure whatever your group is that's going to push forward this project is ready, and that they kind of know what their responsibilities are, what the end goal is, and how you guys are going to get there.
Right, thank you. And our fourth and final step for preparation for CMMC, we recommend you hire a CMMC registered practitioner. Registered practitioner is a certification given by the Cyber AB organization that is an official partner with the DoD that gives out these certifications for CMMC. Here at Cyber Data Pros, we have a registered practitioner, me, as well as a registered practitioner advanced, which is Matt here. Matt, if you want to elaborate on this one.
Yeah, we also have a third one that's on. It's called Chris. It's an RPA, RP as well. But yeah, get involved I can get involved with any kind of RP, RPA, RPO, registered practitioner organization who specializes in this and can help you through this process, especially if you don't have the resources or the time or the tools um, to get ready for a certification assessment. If you've never sat before in a cybersecurity related or privacy related audit or certification, it can be a challenging experience. So if you don't have that experience within your staff, I would definitely consult with somebody who can help you and be ready and to guide you through that process. Um, Again, like I said, it's important to make sure you are preparing your employees and giving them the training and awareness they need to really make it to the goals of these projects of CMMC. But it's definitely helpful to bring in an outside resource to help guide your organization as a whole. And that's where us as Cyber Data Pros or anybody else in the Cyber AB RP ecosystem can really help out. We've definitely seen plenty of organizations who have tried to do it in-house, who've tried to gain the correct knowledge to get it done, and they definitely get in the right direction. But it's that lack of time and dedicated experience that definitely can lead to false starts or kind of leading yourself in the wrong direction. So definitely make sure this is going to be a big undertaking. It's going to probably, if you're going for level 2 certification, it's going to require a good bit of financial investment. So definitely make sure that you are not making large mistakes along the way that take you in the wrong direction and are going to take more time and time that we really don't have at this point, and financial resources to fix. So that's why we always recommend bringing an outside expert who can really help you with this, and who can also sit on those audits and assessments with you. An RPA can sit on a level 2 assessment with you and help you along the process.
Right, thank you. And so that concludes our overview, takeaways, as well as our recommendations for preparation for CMMC. And now we'll open up the floor for any questions that our viewers might have.
All right, looks like there's no questions. Perfect. All right, we can go ahead and wrap this up then.
All right, thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Leah. Thanks for your time.